When I'm working on projects here in my little bedroom workshop, I'm constantly balancing between actually doing the project and running the camera, so I need my filming setup to be as efficient as possible, which is why I do almost all of my shooting on super zoom lenses. Super zoom is a catch-all term for any lens with a really long zoom range, typically a little cheaper, a little lower quality, but they allow you to get shots from pretty wide to super close up without ever needing to switch to another lens. Very efficient. Now today I have to crack into one of these and try to fix it because unfortunately my favorite super zoom, this 18-200, has broken. This is the lens almost every single shot from all my videos in the past year or two have been on. It's either this or the 10-18 when I need ultra wide. So this is a pretty critical piece of gear for me and I kind of need it to work again. So what's broken about it? I still have been shooting with it. I can zoom the barrel by just grabbing the front of it and pulling it like that, but it's supposed to be controlled by this gear ring that is just not connected to anything now. And there's a little piece of plastic rattling around there, and that piece of plastic is jammed in there somewhere, preventing me from zooming this thing all the way wide. It should go a little further in. So it's actually not a 18-200 right now, it's more like a 24-200. Which is a big difference. As much as I'm scared that this thing will never be in one piece again, I'm gonna tear into it and see what I can do. Let's just get this beast of a machine off here first. I have no idea where I'm gonna put this. Now, you might have noticed this specific lens is a little weird looking. It's got this big ol' hump on the bottom of it. This was the first power zoom lens that Sony ever made, which means there's a little motor in here that can control the zooming via a trigger. Nowadays, Sony power zooms look more like any other lens where it's all built into the body instead of this extra bit, but I'm hoping that kind of rudimentary design will make this actually easier to disassemble. I never actually used the power zoom functionality. The reason that I liked it is because on this old style, there's a physical switch for switching between manual zoom control and engaging the motor, which functionally turns this switch into a zoom lock. When you engage the motor, it'll stop the lens from drooping down if you have it faced downwards, which I thought was pretty cool. So I'm hoping that our issue is inside this little lump somewhere, instead of having to go into the actual complicated barrel parts. By the way, a little public service announcement because I am talking about a specific piece of camera gear. Don't go out and FOMO and buy this specific lens because you like the way my videos look. Just a reminder that cinematography is mostly lighting, composition, and color, and the camera body and lens you use don't matter that much outside of form factor and what you physically like to use. I could shoot a whole video on a $30 15-year-old kit lens and probably nobody would notice. In fact, I did. This entire video up until now was shot on this Canon EFS 18-55 kit lens that probably everyone's mom has sitting at home on a Canon T2i, gaff taped to a broken Sony adapter. And you didn't notice, did you? So there's your little dose of clarity on gear acquisition syndrome. Now it's time to stop delaying and probably break this thing. Let's see. Okay, so I'm already diving deeper into this thing than I hoped I would have to. Taking the PCB off is going to be really annoying because that means I have to undo every single one of these little ribbon cables. Getting them off ain't so bad. It's mainly putting them back on correctly that's a bit scary. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. If I had to predict, I think I will be able to get the full range of zoom back, but I might break something else along the way. But we'll see if I can do it at least somewhat properly. Oh, here we go. Did I break any cables? I don't think so. Wow, look at that. I assume those are little motors. Pretty amazing to me that this, as the first power zoom lens, took up all this space and then they figured out how to fit all this stuff inside the body of a normal looking lens after that. Some of you might cringe here, but I really don't care about battle scars on my lens. There we go. All right, we're moving. Here it comes. Look at this, when I flip the switch to engage the motors, it's literally like a transmission, like switching gears or engaging them. I was hoping it was going to be one of these gears in the motor assembly that was shredded, but I kind of knew that it wasn't going to be because it's, at the end of the day, it's between the zoom ring and the barrel, and the rattle is still definitely... It sounds like I loosened it up, actually. if I can get it somewhere that I can access it and pull it out, then I should have full zoom range again. What I need is now to get this front section off, I think. Sometimes they hide screws under the rubber of the zoom and focus rings. A whole lot of nothing. I'm gonna assume then that it comes apart not by having the front come off, but by having the back come off. So I have to keep disassembling. I don't feel like I'm past the point of no return, but I might be about to enter that. There's also a chance if I slide this out, I'm gonna have a ton of loose bearings and stuff that I'll never be able to get back together. Oh. I did not intend to do that, but there's the lens. Wow. Yeah, there's really nothing in here. So let's see, this is our zoom mechanism. Those are our tracks. Anything? Oh. Look at that. That right there is absolutely the beginning and the end of my issues. Oh, you know what? No, actually, there's another piece right here. That's it. It's hitting right there because it's stuck in that track. And then maybe this one wasn't even causing any issues, but that was probably the rattle I was hearing. Well, there we go. That little son of a gun is gone. The question now is, where did those even come from? Here's another broken piece. I really grinded it up in there. Uh-huh. It's from the case. That little nick out of that corner right there. That checks out. It just hit the front too hard when it fell down at some point, slammed the whole zoom barrel back up against those stoppers back there, got those shards stuck up in these zoom tracks, and that was the issue. So at this point I could just put it back together and I've got my full range of zoom again that I can use by just pulling on the barrel. And I'd be happy with that as a result. But I want to see if I can get this actual zoom ring to control it again. So I'm just gonna stick some things back together and try to see if I can understand how those things are supposed to be linked. Okay, I'm starting to understand. The notches that got cut off here wouldn't just be square, would come out a little bit further into the barrel. So if I want the zoom ring to work again, I need to put some piece of plastic back in there that juts out towards the center. To get the zoom barrel off, I have to take it off from the back, I believe. Gotta unglue that ribbon cable without tearing it, otherwise this lens will never focus again. Then I just have to fish this ribbon cable out. Now the focus ring comes off. I kind of thought at this point there would be screws here to take this cap off, but there's not. What is it stuck on now? I'm just taking literally everything off of this lens now. There's a chance there's a teardown guide for this lens on the internet. Sick. Oh, he's just taking the front glass off. That's not useful. You know what? I'm gonna cheat this whole system. All I gotta do is safely super glue something to this edge. So if I rotate it so it's above this gap, in theory, I have enough space to safely do it without making the zoom ring super glued to itself. It's not the way I would have liked to do it, but it's the way I'm gonna try to do it. All right. Don't mind me just super gluing my zoom lens so that it never zooms again. Okay. It's set. There's our little buddy that got super glued. I then went ahead and stuck the other broken off nub to the other side. They need to slide along these tracks up and down the zoom barrel and also fit in these notches at the top. And unfortunately, that was not so simple. No. I broke the notch again. Why do they design them so fragile, man? Now it's covered in grease, so it won't even take super glue. For my second attempt, I cleaned, re-glued, and then melted the plastic together with a soldering iron. Alright, let's give this another shot. Okay, my clip corrupted. I tried to stick it together again, and the knobs broke off again. It's just insane to me that they have the entire leverage of the zoom mechanism going down to these two tiny, tiny little nubs that they made out of plastic. So if you ever just crank the zoom too hard or it takes a fall on the nose, like mine did, it just breaks the whole zoom ring, and on top of that jams up the whole zoom mechanism, and I'm doing my best to fix it. I thought the soldering iron trick was a pretty good idea, but at the end of the day, it's just so small. Getting it aligned to fit in those little paths while still retaining some strength is hard. What I want to do is tear this whole thing up and just rehouse it out of metal like it should have been. That's a whole nother project. For now, I think I need to stop for a minute and think. Gotta stop and think sometimes. Otherwise you get sloppy. Oh. I've discovered the key to move forward. This is not all one piece. There's like a plastic sheath here that's covering everything. Was this metal actually? Huh, didn't feel like it. Now we're cooking. Please don't drop any bearings or springs. Okay, we're good. Oh, and this piece is metal too. See, why didn't they just make this metal, man? Come on, now I have direct access to the spots I need to work on. So much better. I actually feel decent about this. I think I can maybe repair this to be better than it was. While I took a break to strategize, I went ahead with some spray paint therapy on the extra parts that I'd taken off, then let the soldering and paint fumes air out and called it a night. Alright, day 2. Returning to this with fresh eyes, I have a new plan. Now that I have direct access to where these nubs are supposed to go, I soldered them down to buy myself some more space and also to kind of rough up the surface. And instead of trying to reattach the old plastic nubs, I'm going to make some new ones out of good old epoxy. Will this work? Who knows, but it's what I'm going to try. So I'm going to load up the notch with some grease just to make sure that when I form the epoxy up against it, it doesn't stick to the zoom barrel. Give it a little bit of a wire brush too, just for good measure. Alright, here goes nothing. Key to getting this to stick is going to be just jamming as much into all those gaps as I possibly can. And then just move a bunch of material up into that track. Now I think we're in a good spot. It's starting to firm up. We've got sliding up and down. Alright, that's solidified pretty good. Slides up and down very nicely. Let's do the other one. I have a good feeling about this. And now we just pray that this is aligned properly, and once I stick it all together, those notches are actually in the right place relative to everything else. Proper alignment of the notches was the hope, but a lot easier said than done. Trying to sculpt extremely precise components out of putty turned into a huge hide-and-seek game of clearances and trimming little pieces away. After a few rounds of testing and trimming, I sanded the whole top down flat. That would allow the next piece of the body to sit flush on top of it after a little bit more fine adjustment. I test fit everything together. More adjustment and trimming. Still didn't seat all the way in. To avoid taking even more material off my epoxy patchwork, I opted to cut some excess material off the lens barrel itself. This was a desperate last resort after hours of fine adjustment and failed test fittings. I was being kind of reckless here, just out of annoyance at the situation, but I moved forward, made a couple last adjustments to the epoxy, and after literally 2 hours of trying to figure out how to get that zoom assembly the last few millimeters into its proper position. Yes! Oh my goodness. We have full range of zoom back. I can't believe it's actually back together. I mean, I don't want to celebrate too soon, but I really thought I wasn't going to be able to get the zoom ring to work again. Wow. Did I actually do something well? Did I actually fix a lens? Time to start throwing pieces back on. And I'll get to see some of my new painted pieces. See if I can remember where all these screws go. At this point, all in, I'd spent 8 or 9 hours on this lens repair, which at the beginning I just thought was going to be taking a couple pieces off and pulling out a plastic shard somewhere. If I'd known how much of a pain it was going to be to restore functionality to the zoom ring, I probably just would have taken the broken plastic out and kept using the end of the barrel to adjust the zoom. But now that it's over and I know how almost every component inside this lens works, it does feel satisfying. At the start, I was dreading having to put this whole thing back together, but after that whole ordeal, literally making the zoom alignment notches from scratch, sticking screws and ribbon cables back together feels like a walk in the park. Now, those ribbon cables are extremely fragile. I know that mechanically the lens works now, but if I even slightly tore any cable related to aperture or focus, then I'll just have a really fancy paperweight. Alright, let's see if this thing still works. And I dropped the last screw. That's okay. It's bad luck to put them all back in anyway. Alright, next shot will be on this lens. No way. It recognized it. I have aperture control. Well, it's on autofocus, which is working. Switch it to manual focus. That works too. Manual zoom. All the way from the wide end to the long end. Wow. What an adventure. I did not think that would work the first time I put it together, but that's a success. Not done yet though. I'm just gonna put back on the zoom switch cover just so it looks a little nicer, even though I'm not actually putting the switches back on. And the reason I'm doing that is because I literally never use power zoom and I hate accidentally bumping the buttons. And then the rubber focus ring and my gear ring. And there we go. She's back. Alright, last two things. I'm gonna put a little UV filter on the end with a step-up ring just so it's got a bit of extra buffer in case it ever takes a hit like that again. And then I don't know if I like this little piece contrasting, so I'm actually gonna take that back off. Paint it tan like everything else. My idea with this color scheme is I like how white telephoto lenses look, so this is sort of my twist on that, but more of like a military sand color and heavily scratched and scarred like everything in my workshop. If you make your stuff ugly intentionally, you're not going to be paranoid about scratching it later. And then actually I'm going to write my focal lengths on it again. 18, 200. I include weird stuff like 37.5 and 112.5 because it corresponds better to old C-mount lenses that are sometimes marked in inches. So 25 is roughly equivalent to a 1 inch, 50 would be a 2 inch, and so 37.5 millimeter would be 1.5 inch, which is actually a fairly common C-mount lens size. Now the old zoom lever panel's done. Just scratch it up a little bit to match. Yeah, that'll look cool. Oh. Whoops. I just broke that ribbon cable. Nice. I made it through the entire repair without breaking a ribbon cable, and then literally the last thing I'm doing. Of course. But this is the one feature I was intending to disable, so who really cares? There you go. Repaired and cooler looking lens. I like it. I'm just so pleasantly surprised that this thing still works as well as it does for everything I put it through. You know, this isn't my first lens repair, but it's definitely my most ambitious that actually succeeded. I did a similar repair to the lens you're watching through right now, the wide angle 10-18. That's like a $400 lens that I got for 50 bucks broken. Did a similar thing fixing the zoom, but it was so much simpler. I've attempted repairs less ambitious than this that never went back together fully functional, so I'm just so happy that this works. I did get a little bit of dust in the lens during my moment of frustration when I used the Dremel on the lens barrel, but it shouldn't affect the image. Maybe just a bit of diffusion, some bloom around bright lights, which is an effect people pay for. The correct way to do this would have been just buying another broken copy of this lens and switching parts between them, but I'm pretty proud of what I came up with. Another success story for no money May, $0 spent on this repair. So for now, that's all. I'll see you in the next video on my newly repaired super zoom lens, and thank you for your time.